Hi guys, good morning. This is our first lesson in object-oriented programming. So what is an object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm that revolves around objects, meaning the concentration of our programming is the object itself. So first, we need to define an object. Have you seen objects? Of course, yes. Everything around us are objects. The core example is an object. We see this every day in our lives. The lion in the jungle is another type of object. Again, this is a thing we see around us. The tennis ball is also another example of object. If you tried to read our first lesson or the module I uploaded, you can see there the example, the car, the lion, and the tennis ball. As I tell you a while back, objects is everywhere. You as a student is also an object. The table in front of you is an object. The chair to where you are sitting right now is also an object. The keyboard of your computer or your laptop is also an object. The cell phone you are holding right now or the laptop or desktop that you are using now are also objects. So these are objects. Now, in programming, an object is described as a software bundle of variables and related methods. Observe, we have the two terms, variables and related methods. What is a variable? Variable is the data or properties of an object. This describe the essential characteristics of an object. The car, for example, is colored red. The lion, for example, is a tame or wild animal. And the tennis, for example, is colored yellow. The methods or behavior, on the other hand, describes how an object behaves. So the car can move from one place to another. Therefore, we have the word accelerating. Our lion can also be roaring, could be sleeping. So this can be examples of methods. Okay, now we take into consideration our examples. So we have now our car example. We have here the data and properties. We have the type of transmission, the manufacturer, and then the color. Then the behavior can include turning, braking, accelerating. For our lion example, we have data or properties. We have the weight, tame or wild, the type of animal, color, hungry or not hungry. And then the behaviors, we have sleeping, roaring, and hunting. As you observe, guys, behaviors or methods are all verbs. Okay? And that the properties or data are those things that characterizes our object. Okay, do you have questions? Now, if you don't have question, you have now to do your turn. So you are going to list down the properties and behavior of the objects below. Again, as we are doing in our previous subjects or lessons, you need to write your answers in your class notebook. You need now to get a notebook. Although it is a used notebook, but it's still, you can still use it, then you have to select the best notebook that you wanted to use. If you're going to ask about the color of the notebook, for as we are in this pandemic, I am giving you all the resources that you have. You can use any notebook you wish to use as long as it is a clean notebook and that you're going to submit that at the end of our class or of our subject. Okay, so you're now going now to work with the tennis ball and with the student object. I assume, guys, that you know how to do the activity. Just write properties or data of the tennis ball and then you're going to give the behavior. Also with the student, you have to write the properties of data of a certain student or you yourselves, and then you're going to give the behavior. We will be checking your answers later on. Now, if you don't have your notebooks yet, you can just review this part of the video later on, and then you're going to write your answers. We now proceed to our next lesson, UML class diagram. So after defining what is an object, and was able to determine the data or properties, characteristics, and the behavior and methods of a certain object, we now try to create a design for this object. And we are going to use a class diagram. A UML or Unified Modeling Language class diagram is the main building block in object-oriented modeling. It is used to show the different objects in a system, their attributes, which is also called the fields, the data, the properties, the characteristics, or the instance variables, their operation, was also called the behavior or methods of an object, and the relationships among them. Relationships because in a certain system, there will be more than one object. Such that class diagram is just like our flowchart. You remember in Programming 1 or Fundamentals of Programming that we created a flowchart first before we code a certain program. This is also true with object-oriented programming. So here, instead of using a flowchart, we will be using a class diagram. And the class diagram represents the object itself. So how do we represent our class diagram? So we are going to use a rectangle. A rectangle consists of three compartments. The first compartment consists of the object name. This is the object itself. The second one is for attributes, the fields, the characteristics, instance variable, or the variable name. And then the third one will be the methods or behavior of our object. We'll take an example, the car. Okay, as you notice, the first part consists of car. Car is the name of our object. Then the second compartment consists of the fields or the instance variable, the data or properties, which was enumerated by us in our previous lesson. So we have here the transmission type, the manufacturer, the color. Also notice, guys, that we need to determine the data type of each of these variable names. So we have a string as data type of all of our variables. Notice also that there is a negative or dash sign before our instance variable. This is for us to indicate the type of access modifier that will be used in our program. The third compartment consists of the turning, the braking, accelerating. Again, this is coming from our example in the previous lesson, wherein we have this as the behavior or its methods. Notice, guys, that we have here an open and closed parenthesis. The open and closed parenthesis, guys, is used in order for us to signify that these are methods. So this determines a method from an instance variable. Also, observe that a positive symbol or plus sign is indicated before each of the name of the methods or behavior because, again, this is the access modifier of each of these methods. Void also is not new to you since this has been discussed in our previous lesson before, such that a void is a return type that indicates that a method will not return any value. So far, guys, we have the following access modifiers. We have the public, the private, the protected, and the default. And when using this in our class diagram, we have to use the following symbol. We have the plus symbol, we have the negative symbol, we have the pound or the sharp symbol, and then our default doesn't have any symbol. So public is positive symbol, private is negative or dash symbol, then the protected one is the sharp or our number sign symbol. Now, let us try to create the class diagram of our three objects in our previous lesson, such that we have the lion, the tennis ball, and the student objects. Again, you are required to write your answers in your class notebook. Hi guys, now this is the answer to activities 1 and 2. So first, we have problem number 1. So we need to list down the properties and behavior of the objects below. So the given objects are the tennis ball. So if we are going now to consider this object, the following are the properties and fields and behavior. So we have here color, shape, texture, and size for the properties. You notice guys that we do not write yellow, round, rough, small, or big as part of properties or fields. Why? Because these are values of our properties, such that the color, the shape, the texture, and the size are the characteristics of the object and not the value itself. Therefore, it is incorrect that we are going to place there the value. Say for example, it is big, it is the small. Okay, so we cannot use them because these are the value of a certain property. Okay, I do hope guys you can differentiate when we say properties and the value of the properties. Okay, so that is how we write or determine the properties of fields of a certain object. Under the behavior, we have here the bouncing, flying, and rolling. You notice again guys that we are using here verb because behavior guys are verb, something that can be done by the object. And verb plus we have the ing. So we have here bouncing. Instead of the word bounce, we have bouncing. Instead of fly, we have flying. Instead of roll, we have rolling. Okay? So that is how we write the behavior of an object. Next, we have a student. So here guys, we have ID number, name, address, and course of our student. Again, these are the characteristics of our student object. Some of you guys place there beautiful, handsome, brave, honest. Okay, those are actually guys values of a certain property, and that property could be quality. Again, when we say properties or fields, we need guys to get the characteristics, not the value of the characteristics. Okay, and then for behavior, we have here reading, reciting, listening, studying. Again, we are using here verb plus ing. Although, some of you place cheating under behavior. Perhaps that is what you are doing as a student. That is why you place cheating under behavior. Okay, so this is the answer for problem number 1. Let us now proceed to problem number 2. So we are now going to draw the UML class diagram of the lion, tennis ball, and the student objects. Remember guys, in our previous lesson, the object lion is already discussed, providing guys the fields and variables and the behavior. So if we look into the lion class diagram, we have the following. So the object name is lion, then we have weight, tame or wild, color, hungry or not hungry, as fields or properties or variables, such that guys, weight is double, tame or wild is a string, and then color is string, hungry or not hungry is a string. Notice guys that we are using here your private access modifier. In our methods, compartment number 3, we are using here guys our public access modifier, the plus sign, wherein we have now sleeping, roaring, hunting. We have here the open and close parentheses guys to denote that we have your methods. And then we are using your void as a return type. For the second object guys, we have your tennis ball. We have here your color, your shape, your texture, and size, which are the variables, properties, or fields of the tennis ball. All of them are declared as a string and are of private access modifier. For our methods, we have our bouncing, flying, rolling, and that guys again we are using here positive sign, which means that these are with public access modifier. we have your void as return type. For the third one, we have the student. We have ID number, name, address, course declared as a string again. And then we have your private access modifier. For our behavior, we have reading, reciting, listening, studying declared as public, and then with void as return type. So therefore, guys, these are now the answers for our problem number 2. The class diagram of the three objects, lion, tennis ball, and student. Now, guys, notice that you need to create a compartment within the class diagram, within the rectangle, such that, guys, if this is the rectangle, there is a line between the object name and the fields or variables, and also another line between your fields or variables and your methods. You have to remember, guys, that you need to draw your class diagram properly, provide the access modifier of each of the variables or fields or properties, also determine the data type of the variables, and then for our methods, do not forget to include the access modifier, which is plus, meaning it is public, and then we have the open and close parentheses, guys, that denotes method, and then of course, guys, the return type of each of our methods. Okay, so this is the answers for problem number 2.